documents, not that have information. My sound sounds low. One sec.
Yeah.
But that there's a document. Let's see. How's that? Is that my sound better? Oh,
Yeah.
there,
Yeah.
overclock. Okay. Um, but that there's like a document repository. So, like for instance, we have Paulo just created a terms of use agreement that I'm going to put on the website, and then we'll have a grant receiver contract template, like not any information.
Hmm.
So I was thinking it might be good to just have a document repository to have all this stuff on there,
That's
rather than having it in the operational
Yeah,
agreement
no,
repository.
that's
What do you
better.
think?
It's like, and I think like as I remember, as Paolo said, if we have stuff, if we link to stuff in the operational agreement, but this stuff is present in our in or let's say in the in the Tangle Treasury GitHub, then it's no problem because then it's not like, okay, you link to something, but somebody else is controlling the source of this and could change it, and that therefore would make changes in the
Mm,
operation agreement without people knowing. But if you put it in a separate folder, in like you said, in like a document repository in the organization that you control, in the GitHub org, then I think it's a perfect place, the perfect way to do that. Yeah. And then you can
yeah.
maybe,
Okay.
because
Cool.
then you can do internal linking. So you're not basically linking away
Right.
from GitHub. So you're just linking to a different file in your general repository, which basically belongs to the operational
Mm-hmm.
agreement.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm. Cool.
I think that would be cool.
Um,
Yeah.
yeah. Do you want me to share the screen and go through the lessons learned again?
You can do it. Or, yeah, let's do. You can do it. That's easier than. Um, just share the screen and then, because I'm already recording this, of course.
Okay.
So maybe I go even full. This is okay. This is this because I had the Google Doc. Um,
Mm.
see if the uh, is this different than what you have in the Google Doc?
The Google Doc.
There's a Google document with like
Uh.
lessons learned.
Uh. Oh, this is okay, sorry. The Google Doc is what Richard came up with
Yeah.
to update the review matrix. We could go through
Yes.
that one. We haven't really gone fully through that one yet. Um so yeah, we could do that.
Because you shared it in the Discord, and I had a look into it. I think that's actually a pretty good approach. Um,
Yeah. So there's that one, and then above the Google Docs, like in the comments,
yeah,
is
you have the
the
Airtable thing.
public
Yeah,
Airtable one.
yeah.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, maybe we start with the Google Doc. That's cool, and we maybe can. Should we compare it to what we currently have in the framework,
Mm-hmm.
or maybe we just first go through, because I think these are the he's speaking to all those points. Um,
Okay. Um,
Yeah, there it is.
yeah.
So you have this.
Uh,
The first point is this relevant to the Shimmer IOTA
Shimmer
ecosystem.
ecosystem.
Yeah, and
And then
one question actually:
Mhm.
are the grant grievers, are they using this pointing system? It does it make
it
sense?
um yes, we're definitely grading. I mean, everyone's grading everything.
Hmm.
Um, and I think it's a good starting point to kind of see, um, and it gets our minds thinking about it. I mean, I
Yeah,
think, we do it so much, then we know like, okay, this is relevant or this
yeah,
isn't relevant.
yeah,
Um, so I mean, if one committee was going to stay on for multiple years, I'd say it's not needed. But just the fact that a committee could change, I think it's good to have.
Cool. So it's not something that you say, okay, we need to change this or change the scoring system or something. So, I
Yeah.
mean, this is what Richard proposes, I think, to change a few guidelines around that, yeah?
Yeah, he's just saying that, some of these are not as clear or specific to the IOTA Shimmer ecosystem.
Yeah.
And that maybe these are just better sort of questions when we ask ourselves. Uh, and, I mean, maybe even these are just sort of guiding questions, he's saying,
Actually, but I actually like that approach, kind of. So you could basically say that instead of this, or let's say you could adopt or adjust this matrix system with this thing as a content, yeah. So
Mhm.
kind of add that okay, if you are evaluating something for point one, yeah, relevance to the Shimmer IOTA ecosystem, you should keep in mind those specific questions to come to a proper conclusion. Yeah, that's
And or
yeah,
what we could do is just keep the grading, but instead of like, because our current matrix kind of has like, where on this
yeah,
does it lie? And then you give that point, where rather it could be, hey, ask these questions and rate it 1 to 5, 5 being the best, one
yeah,
being the worst.
yeah.
And it still meets this because then I was like, oh man, all the formulas have to change then. And uh so I was almost going to try to combine some of his just so the formulas stay the same. Um,
Okay,
but
because you're doing this in the automated or like semi-automated in the Airtable
yeah,
um, evaluation sheet that you have in Airtable. Yeah.
correct. So they pull up a review form, and I mean I can let me just see here for a second. Let me just think out loud. Um, I can't really pull it up because I don't know
Mm.
if there's any private information. I was going to pull up
Yeah.
one of the grants, but essentially when the grant reviewers they get an email, it pops up. They have all the grant information, and then they actually go through and click,
Yeah.
based on this current one, is it outstanding, good, okay,
Yeah.
needs improvement, etc. Um, and then I don't have in there sort of all this information. They just
Mm.
have a link they can go and they know basically.
Yeah.
But again, I think just that grading 0 to 4, 4 being the best and 0 being the lowest,
Mm.
if we use these more focused IOTA Shimmer kind of
Yeah.
questioning is a better way to rate it.
Okay,
And
cool.
just because something isn't, I mean, we haven't seen anything yet, but I mean, I assume that there could be that outlier where it's a good project, but just for whatever reason has low scoring on.
Mm.
Maybe they don't have really good plan and funding. Well, that's something that really uh, maybe Touchpoint could support them with or there's
Yeah.
kind of mentors out there that can help them better with that. Um, so I'm not saying that. What I'm trying to say is like just because we grade it doesn't determine whether we
Yeah.
pass, we accept or decline a grant. It's more we look at. It's just one variable in all the aspects
Yeah.
of it all. But yeah.
Yeah. I think actually, so for my personal view, I actually like this way how Richard framed it here a bit better than what we have now in the framework. I mean, for your internal working, um, that's anyway, you're just scoring the things. But for understanding an outsider what this rating is about and how it is determined, it looks kind of a little bit cleaner than this matrix with all these different similar but like a little bit lower, a little bit lower, a little bit lower, a little bit lower, a little bit
Right.
different things. Um, so we could think about basically replacing this table in the framework with with those questions basically, and then like you said, giving like score 1 to 5 is from
Mhm.
best to lowest. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
I agree. And I
Maybe.
might combine some of these economic viabilities and efficiencies.
Yeah.
And yeah, so I'll do that. And I think what then could be is rather than having these categories, it'll just be the questions that we ask ourselves when we're thinking relevance to IOTA Shimmer ecosystem, and then a score
Yeah.
0 to 4,
Yeah.
basically. Okay, cool.
Cool.
That would good.
That's
And this stuff would all stay the same.
yeah.
Uh, yeah,
Yeah. It's actually
nice.
this actually I think would be cool. Should we maybe go from the top? Um,
Sure.
I
So
I yeah.
he wrote relevance and Shimmer IOTA ecosystem
Mm.
to evaluate the extent to which the project aligns with the Shimmer IOTA, the project's commitment to building the Shimmer network, and how it contributes to the ecosystems. So guiding questions would be, how does the project align with the Shimmer IOTA's objectives and goals? How is the project contributing to the development of the growth of the Shimmer IOTA ecosystem? Does the project utilize the Shimmer IOTA, or does it plan to integrate it in the future? And I
I
think
mean,
those are key questions
yeah,
that
and
we
I mean
want
this is very much the same stuff that is kind of in the matrix, but just like cleaner formulated
to know.
without these
Hmm.
without this I mean it's a bit strange how they how it is in the current one with this like uh yeah strange a
Hmm.
little bit more and a little bit less than yeah.
Hey guys, can I ask a general question about the first one?
Hmm.
Always.
When it says, how does the project align with Shimmer and IOTA's objectives and goals? Like, just like in a general sense, what is, like, how would I think is Shimmer and IOTA's objectives and goals?
That's a very good question actually.
I was
uh
kind of in my head as I was reading. I
yeah
was like,
yeah
someone's gonna ask that.
yeah
I mean, me personally, I guess, just as a discussion's sake, I think Shimmer and IOTA's objectives and goals are different from necessarily the Treasury's vision. And I always think of the Treasury's vision to be that it's a positive growth of the Shimmer and IOTA ecosystem. So on bullet point 2, that's generally how I always, me personally, when I review any grants, is I know our vision and for the Treasury of the community's vision that they wrote, but that's an interesting when you think of what are Shimmer's and IOTA's objectives and goals, and the
yeah
community's never really stated that. I don't know what IF has stated, but me personally, from over the years, I feel like the Shimmer and IOTA's objectives and goals is basically to allow free access to the use of the protocol and be flexible. Like, we've always kind of put out there in the feeless model that, anyone can kind of come and build, and you don't have to be a millionaire in a proof of stake system, or, a super mining conglomerate. But yeah, I'd be
mm.
interested if that's written anywhere from the IOTA
I
Foundation
mean, we
side.
have, yeah, of course, we have the, if you check the website, we have our mission, we have the vision and mission statement. Yeah, this is basically valued around digital autonomy for everyone. Yeah, that's currently the core message. Um, that is kind of yeah. You could say, okay, these are the goals for IOTA, but directly you could ask, okay, are they the same for Shimmer? Um,
Mm.
Potentially a little bit different. So actually, I think there is some room for subjective stuff here. So either if we would really implement this, we would really need to specify those goals based on what currently what the IOTA Foundation has kind of proposed as its mission, because we are in the end we are not setting vision and missions for IOTA, because we don't say that we are IOTA. We always set these things for the IOTA Foundation. Yeah. So
Mm.
we I think
Well, and
this would be something we need to formulate a little bit differently so that it doesn't leave much room for guessing. Yeah.
Well, and I also think it's tough to see. To me, it's flexible, and that's one thing that IOTA and Shimmer always strive to be in their protocol. But in the sense of like, okay, Shimmer, I think has went through a couple different iterations on what it is becoming, and that's part of a growth cycle anyways. But I think for right now it seems that it's going to be a focus on DeFi. So we as the treasury committee again are always looking at what's the best of the growth. Well, if the Shimmer's goal is focus on DeFi, then we want to support that. So we've kind of shifted, been a little agile to support that. Now, once the network takes off, things may change as things change very quickly in crypto. And those objectives and goals, it might shift from, who knows, just for instance, DeFi to gaming, or DeFi back to a test net, or it might shift to its own network. And I think then the treasury will shift to support that, because ultimately we just want to support positive growth.
Yeah.
And to support positive growth is whatever its kind of objectives and goals are. So I think that one is just a little bit fluid and flexible depending on
I mean,
what the current.
yeah, the problem is kind of the kind of really the question is who has said that the focus is on DeFi? Is this just based on the understanding of you guys now, which
Oh
is
no,
actually
I think as
correctly, but kind of the problem is there is no official source for something like this. So I fully agree with how you do it and focus. I wouldn't just, I wouldn't personally not put such a sentence in it, um, because then people will hold you accountable for it and say, okay, where are the objectives and goals defined? Show me where it's written and who has it written. Have you written it? Has the IOTA Foundation written it? Is it a Discord message from Dom, or what is it actually? I mean, if the foundation would release an updated, but then still, it's then the IOTA Foundation's objectives and goals, which people could say, okay, but IOTA and Shimmer is bigger than the IOTA Foundation. So I would formulate it differently, and potentially maybe not use that point so indirectly. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, like, what I was thinking was if I have a project and it's using, IOTA or Shimmer Network, but it's just like the background. Do you know what I mean?
Mm.
But so it's like there's transactions going on, but it's not like, I'm advertising that I'm using, it's like a website now using the internet, but they don't like
Yes.
advertise it. You know what I mean? So like,
And
it's like it's like getting the network used, so that has value in itself, but the
yeah.
project but the
And
project is only interested in succeeding as its own project, so does that mean that the objectives and goals are misaligned, or
uh,
just the fact that it's using IOTA or Shimmer in the background, it is aligned? I guess that was the question.
yeah,
I mean, me personally. Go ahead,
I
Philo.
think you could even ask, I mean, this is a natural thing. Projects will use IOTA in the backend, but they will likely do things and develop use cases that could even be contrary to our goals and objectives. It's an open protocol, open source, permissionless. Everybody can use it for whatever they want. If you want a nuclear power plant with it, do it. If you want to develop um, cruise missiles for North Korea, do it. Yeah, it's like nobody can stop that. Of course, if they would come and ask for a grant, then yeah, there would be some evaluation need to be done if this is still possible to align what they want to do with the protocol with what we all think our goal is to establish with with IOTA, basically our vision of digital autonomy. Yeah. So, or let's say somebody would like to build a surveillance tool for the CIA based on IOTA and asks for a grant. I mean, they can still do it, but I wouldn't grant them a grant for building such a thing from the community treasury. Yeah.
I think at least from the committee side, we would be looking at, that digital autonomy and securing data and that sort of
Yeah.
freedom of access. And if the grant is opposite of that, is really hindering digital autonomy in any way, or creating something that isn't securing data and actually going to be a data vulnerability, then we would look at that point of, well, this kind of goes against those IOTA's goals.
Yeah.
But again, that's only one of the 3 points, and again, the vision of the Treasury Committee, dictated by the community, is, does it support a positive growth in the development of of both ecosystems? So if the proposal is that it's built on IOTA or Shimmer on the layer, sort of similar to the internet, like you're saying, I mean, that's a good thing. That's like, something that helps, what is
Yeah.
it, like industry adoption, because, you know, large industries almost don't want anything to do with crypto. So we would probably see that as almost a benefit, that, hey, here's something being built using IOTA, which I think was the original vision of, hey, this is going to be the underlying layer protocol that you don't even know you're using it, similar to the internet.
Yeah, yeah, right. I guess that was my point was,
Mhm.
a project that's using IOTA, but it's just like in the background. So they're not like marketing it or making a big deal out of it. But,
Right.
it definitely needs to use the network. So then, it just sounds like when you read, like, does it align with Shimmer and IO's objectives and goals? It sounds like it needs to kind of, put that in the forefront. But, some project is only interested in itself. Do you know what I mean? Not like in a shady way, because
Right.
I totally understand what you guys are saying about, like, doing bad, being a bad actor just in general. But I guess my point was more about what JD's talking about.
Yeah.
That it's
I
not
mean,
like it's
it
not a
doesn't
big point. You know what I mean?
it doesn't need to promote IOTA on its website
Exactly. Yeah.
just to even to get a grant. Yeah, it's like it shouldn't be if it has a, like JD said, if it uses the network and it brings a lot of users and activity on the chain. Perfect, great.
Yeah.
Get it in, even if you don't put it in everyone's face that it's using IOTA or Shimmer in a part of its backend. It doesn't need even to be the whole project. I mean, look at if a big player would come in and they would just use IOTA for a small portion of their applications to do some data stuff, validation in the backend, and it could still be more activity than we ever had from just such a big player doing a little bit with IOTA. And then of course they wouldn't put it in the forefront of their advertising, because for them it's just like a small part. Yeah.
And then another way to, I guess you could say, I don't want to say market is the right word, but the benefit that would come from it is, if it's on a large scale, all the transaction percent per second would increase, and that's always something as a data point to show when a network is growing. Um,
Yeah.
so it'd be
But
pretty
even
cool.
but even small projects kind of, yeah.
True, true.
Yep, all good. I think that's cool. Yeah, like I said, I would look in maybe rephrase this sentence a little bit, so it's a little bit less, yeah,
And I
fits.
think what Overclock is saying, maybe that should
Yeah.
be the third sentence and not the primary one.
Mm,
So
Also good thing, yeah. If you go down the list from top to down, you basically you have this exclusion things. Yeah.
okay,
No, that's
cool.
cool.
Um,
Short-term, long-term
okay,
effect of the
impact
project.
for Shimmer ecosystem. Oh, does the project use? Okay, so we did that. Assess the potential short-term and long-term effects of the project on the Shimmer ecosystem and the broader crypto and Web3 environment. guiding questions. What short-term and long-term impact will the project have on the Shimmer IOTA ecosystem? How does the project enhance the value or reputation of Shimmer IOTA within the broader crypto and Web3 environment? How does the project plan to measure its impact on the ecosystem? That's actually a good one, and that's one I almost wonder if we should add that to the grant application, because that's sometimes we feel like we lack a lot of information and that we're almost, then we always just have to ask a lot of questions and ask for submit more information. But ultimately, we do want to know what the team thinks is their short-term and long-term impact and how they're going to basically work to build that. But I think it's good to know from our side is, again, if we go back to the vision of as it's expanding in a positive way, how is this going to affect the crypto and Web3 environment?
The question with measuring is a bit
It's
is
tough.
kind of
Yeah,
difficult.
it's
I
tough.
mean, you can't. I mean, of course, if a project, let's say a project comes up with a plan and a good answer for this could be, of course, a plus point because it could make your work easier because if they are able to deliver verifiable data on how their application has helped to grow Shimmer, blah 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 blah, that's cool. Of course, you would somehow need to be able to verify if this data that they deliver to you is correct. But if they don't have plans to measure their impact or to measure what they are bringing, or let's say, because measurement always you need to deliver some real proper data, because otherwise you can just guess and that's okay. But measuring always need to be really measured by something, and that's could be difficult to have it as a requirement. Or to say, okay, if you don't measure it, you won't get a high score here. I would maybe just
And
say that's like
I don't think
a good
I don't
point
think we're saying
extra. Yeah.
I don't think we're saying, if someone doesn't meet any of these bullet points, then they fail, you
Yeah.
know. But I definitely agree. We haven't seen many. We've seen a few grants that actually have like, hey, this is our plan to use KPI metrics to kind of measure our successability or the success of the project in the future. And that really shows that, okay, these individuals have really business knowledge, like they have some
Yeah.
experience. Um, and it definitely sets a grant apart. But at the same time, um, let's say a team is very developer focused, they just don't have that business experience. That doesn't make their project bad.
Yeah.
Then we would focus more on, okay, what are they developing and what will that have an effect, which they would then explain in these two terms. And the also reverse applies. We've seen some really amazing business grant kind of proposals that have good KPI metrics, but might be lacking on the technical expertise, that they may be looking to just hire kind of technical consultants. So, there's pros and cons to each, and I think we do look at the both of those.
Yeah. I like you said, I would add this potentially as a question in the application form. That's
Yeah. Let's see. So maybe I'll do that. Like, does the project plan to measure, and if so, how? So it doesn't mean they have to, but if they do, then how are they going to do it? And that will give us a good idea of their experience and their kind of business mindset over it. And I think this first one, I was almost reading this as like, is this only the crypto and Web3? Because there are going to be some projects that might be simply Web2, but aren't technically Web3. and I don't think those should be negated or ignored. But I think this one question for like a non sort of crypto Web3, like maybe it's just something to do with data.
I mean, I think we had this because kind of this is the thing. Okay, Shimmer is really very much focusing on Web3 stuff. So
Mhm.
Web2 business things won't do anything on
Yeah,
Shimmer
focus.
actually. That's like for IOTA. Um,
Mhm.
so I think we could keep the focus on Web3, which anyway is the focus on DeFi and crypto, for Shimmer at this moment in because otherwise,
Sure.
if you make Web2, then I mean still they would have to use Shimmer. The question is if you really want to focus on funding things that don't really play the Web3 game in the moment.
Well, and I think that would this bullet point would cover that. I mean, whoops. Ultimately, if even if it's a Web2 project, if it has great short-term and long-term impact um, on the Shimmer IOTA ecosystem, which is just adoption. I think, if we can create adoption, or for Overclock's example, you'd say like I wanted to say if it creates adoption and like knowledge of IOTA Shimmer, but such as that example, that's the underlining that no one knows about. It's not creating the knowledge, but it's creating the adoption. So maybe we could kind of put something trying to impact on the project have on the Shimmer IOTA ecosystem. Let's do. I mean, ultimately, the impact is the adoption, and the vision is it being done in a positive manner? Is always the vision of it.
Mm.
So we can add that to it. Okay.
Yeah, that's cool.
Plan and funding considers the practicality of the proposal budget, taking into account the project's goals and deliverables. How is the proposed budget allocated across the different project activities? Is the budget justified considering the project's deliverables and timeline? Does the team have a realistic understanding of the costs associated with executing the project? Definitely plan and funding is probably where we see the least amount of information. And it's difficult because, a standard VC is going to, give me balance sheets.
Yeah.
Give me income statements, cash flow statements. We want to see your standings. We're going to do, credit checks, all this stuff. And it's interesting coming from a treasury standpoint where we're not necessarily signing NDA. It is transparent. So, I understand that projects have a right to not necessarily divulge how much they're paying developers, where their developers are located, or anyone up building. So it's interesting. We definitely try to do the best due diligence, but understand it's a different from the norm. But we probably would like to see more information just giving us confidence that, okay, this project understands how to manage the financial aspect of completing this project. We haven't seen too many, but we've seen a few that seemed a lot higher than we thought. Okay, this just seems like, and I understand people putting in maybe 10-20% fluff to make sure if they go over budget, that's normal. But extreme amounts over that is,
I mean,
sometimes we consider maybe they don't really have experience managing the financials of such a project.
yeah. Did you from time to time check uh, other submittals from other projects that are kind of comparable? Kind of like what they we have this
Hmm.
pretty big database from Polkadot, where
Hmm.
I mean you have all the and because they have quite good teams submitting and experienced teams, you have some really good proposals with really good balance sheets and really project management plans with developer costs and hours and all these things in. So sometimes if you really have kind of doubt or a little bit like unsure on a project, I would sometimes just say, hey guys, look, I mean, in other projects this also works. Yeah, I mean they request 90K from Polkadot, but they have to deliver this to get that. Yeah, so maybe sometimes you have to push them a little bit to do their
Right. Hmm.
homework. Yeah.
Hmm. Yeah, I think in the beginning, things were a bit high. We definitely did spend some time looking at different treasuries for that. I remember we talked about that a couple months ago, and I was surprised. Feel like I found a lot of higher grants,
Yeah.
higher costs, but they're also bigger treasuries. Um, and and I think people realized we're just not looking to to necessarily approve several $200,000 grants because
Yes.
we would chew up the treasury immediately. So then the grants quickly came lower, and it looked like people were actually the developer costs were lower than global average, which was
Mhm.
good to see. And then we talked to a few projects, and they said this doesn't actually cover all of our developer budget, but we're just looking to cover half, stuff
Yeah,
like
cool.
that,
I
which
mean
was good.
that's
Yeah,
also not bad in the end. Yeah. So
yeah, yeah.
yeah.
No, that's I wish we could cover all of it, but we only got in today's value. Even when we started in April, it was only I
Mhm.
think 1.7 million USD worth.
Yeah.
So that's really
And,
not much.
and actually, if you think about, it's actually you could nearly say that it was kind of a good move to have this yearly budget. So let's say, okay, if we would have not done all of this, so you would have got the full 10% community treasury in the hand of the grant committee. You would also, of course, then display it on the website. So you wouldn't have like 1.5 million, you would have like 15 million.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Then I think you wouldn't have such proposals where the people are kind of like, okay, like they have a small treasury, maybe they can't fund
Yes.
the big stuff, but maybe they give us a little
Yeah.
bit, which is maybe not a bad move. It was not on purpose, but it limits a little bit the grabbing effect, I think. Yeah.
Well, I always think it's good to just say, hey, this is what we have.
Yeah.
Let's only spend this for this year. I mean, any organizational um, financial management kind of works like that. This is our financial assets. We want
I
this
mean,
to last at least
yeah,
five
yeah.
years.
No,
But
I just
but I
mean
I,
like
I think it,
for the
especially in the beginning, when EVM hasn't fully launched and all that, I think it turned out really, really good in the sense of, hey, let's just take a portion,
mm,
let's work with this, and it worked to help out. So
yeah, yeah.
yeah.
It's especially, I think it's like for this outside perception. Yeah. If you come to a treasury and you see they have just like 1.5 million, or you come to a
Hmm.
treasury and you see they have 50 million, and even still, if
Yeah.
there is like another 200 million in the back somewhere, um, the project, first of all, if they are not really involved in the deeper ecosystem, they just see what is shown on the website. Okay, these are the treasury
Right.
holdings. This is all that's available, and that's good. Yeah. So, and they don't need to know that there are 200 million lying still around in the back for the future. They
Right.
just see
Right.
that's where we can tap in, and
Mhm.
yeah, so they tailor their proposals likely towards this. Yeah.
Mhm. Cool.
Cool. Yeah.
Um, so economic viability reflects the long-term financial sustainability of the project, including its potential to generate revenue or secure additional funding after the grant has been expended. Does the project have a plan for financial sustainability after the grant funds are exhausted? How does the project plan to generate revenue or attract further investment? Does the project's business model demonstrate potential for long-term success? So this is really interesting, and we found talking through research and found talking to people that there are, I mean, it's big business treasuries in crypto right now. Like, I mean, probably aggregated all together, there's several billion worth of grants money, and there are projects we have heard. I'm not saying that we have seen, but that pretty much just go from grant to grant, and that is their financial business plan is just living on grants, you know. And even in traditional, now that I've talked to different people and looked more at the nonprofit side, I mean, there's other businesses sort of in the nonprofit that just go for government grants.
Yeah.
So we definitely do not want to support. We don't want to be simply the financial support for any
The
grant.
next 3
We just
months
can't.
until they hop over to
Yeah.
the next one. Yeah.
We just can't, be there like, oh, when you run out, come back, we'll give you some more. So we definitely want to take a stance, and it's just based again on the limited treasury. We're not a huge treasury to, provide sort of that seed capital, and then the projects can kind of be sustainable on their own after that. Or give them enough to create like an MVP that they can then go to, VCs and get investor funding or whatever. As long as it's going to end up, when they're hopefully successful, support the ecosystem. So we definitely have been looking at these grants. This is probably a big one, aside from, will the impact be a positive growth of the ecosystem? Is, does this grant show that they can, they're on a path or a plan to become self-sustainable financially?
Yep. That's a nice, good point, important point.
Yeah. And this probably maybe can add to the actual grant application in some way.
Hey, JD, I have a question about that. When you said, like, some projects, their whole agenda is to go from grant to grant to, sustain themselves, right? So I'm assuming that these grants, they don't have some kind of an agreement with the project that they need to eventually launch on their network or something.
Well, so apparently there is things like, let's say someone has a DApp, and that DApp is pretty cool, and it'll be good for the network. Excuse me. And maybe that DApp costs, let's just say 50,000 to create, all cost. But once you create it, especially if it's an EVM chain, you can almost just copy and paste it. You're not necessarily spending 50,000. So then they go to another one and they say, hey, we're on these 3 networks and we have this following. So now, excuse me. So now the treasury is looking at, and we're not turning down those. We're just then looking at what's your following, because that's ultimately what we're paying for, And they're taking the thought, I think, to say, hey, we know how much this is worth, how much it was built, but they're not actually rebuilding it. They're just copy and pasting it to the next network. And some treasuries do that. Like the big treasuries, they're like, hey, you've got 50,000 followers on Twitter and 1,000 followers on each YouTube cast. Sure. Here's 50 grand. Come on over. Bring your people. So there's still a positive effect to it. But again, and some of those we've looked at and archived and been like, man, if we have 3 million in the treasury, hey, let's basically bring these guys over. But with 700,000, 800,000, we're like, it's just not worth it, So that's kind of what we're seeing.
So, like, when you're asking about their financial sustainability and stuff, it's
Mhm.
more a question of their commitment to IOTA and Shimmer. Like let's say
Um,
it's like this app that you're talking about, and they've already deployed on like Ethereum layer 2, like
mhm.
other projects and stuff, and they come to you guys for a grant. So are you looking at them like, now what's the value proposition? Do we give them the 50 grand so that hopefully we get some marketing out of this and some users out of their base, and that it's actually a pretty good DApp? Or are you looking at it like, they're not really going to like follow through in creating a user base for their DApp in our ecosystem?
Yeah, absolutely. Like one, is their DApp, yes, going to, is it actually going to bring people to Shimmer, or is it going to suck people away from Shimmer? That's one thing we look at. If, it's more of a user base, like, okay, we can see they're just kind of copy and pasting. And then even if they are copy and pasting, what's their financial long-term sustainability? So is it a tokenomics aspect? Like what are they using to pay their developers to keep the system going? And if they don't have a good tokenomics model, or if they don't have some sort of financial business plan that can keep paying developers to keep this, DApp running, even if they can copy and paste, and at some point they're going to reach the end of, protocols that will pay for them and their following. So then they're going to have to be self-sustainable at that time.
Yeah, I think it's really important for those apps uh, to find a way to create real revenue, because like
Mm-hmm.
you can of course go from grant to grant, and you can keep your project alive 2 years like this, but if you're not able to create enough user activity on those chains or on the chain that you are, because in the end, where are they living from? Either, like you said, they live from issuing their tokens and hoping for a bull market that their token gets super value, so they can then sell it for a high price and fill up their treasury, or they are able to create revenue through the users they use. Yeah, of course they have to charge some fees, and
Mm-hmm.
you have network fees, and then you have application fees, and successful protocols create huge revenue streams just through the user activity. They don't need grants anymore. I mean, they
Yeah.
take grants, but they use those grants to fill up their own treasury or to really develop updated and new features for their protocol and stuff like this. And I mean, these are the ones that you actually want to have, yeah, like the blue
Yeah.
chips. Yeah. So, and of course, we can't afford them, but this is what happens if you want to have Aave, or you want to have SushiSwap, or things like this on your, or Uniswap on your protocol. Um,
Right.
they, of course, they can copy paste and deploy on every chain, but why should they do that? Yeah, they only should do that if they either see that they can really create revenue through users. So of
Yeah.
course, for Uniswap, the question to go and deploy not only on Ethereum but also on Optimism and on Phantom and on Avalanche was a thing of, yeah, cool, they have quite a huge chain, a lot of
Yeah.
users. So for us, that's economic viable because we think we can create enough users and activity to create real revenue. And
Yeah.
otherwise, you could just get such a thing with a huge grant. And but the thing is, I think they will also then not really care about building up this activity on such a chain. If you give them 500K, they know this 500K. Okay, cool. We can just let the thing running for the next 2 years on that chain. We don't really have to care about what's happening there because it's just like deploy and let it run. It runs from itself.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, it's for a chain, of course, super nice to have such a big name coming in, because this will of course bring attention and users and token price increase. but in the end, it's really have to figure out if they just come to take those 500K, or if they really want to do something useful on that network.
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah, and we,
So I got a question about that. So like
mhm.
that's really interesting, like what you guys are talking about. So like let's say uh, the two most like let's say a couple of projects in our ecosystem are going to generate the most adoption or activity on the network, and those are usually like DeFi platforms, like let's say Shimmer C or Tango Swap, right?
Yeah.
So like it's like is it imperative that those kind of platforms succeed in our ecosystem? Do you know what I mean? So
I,
then is it
I,
worthwhile for the treasury to kind of help them or aid them in making sure that they have a good chance of success?
yeah. So we've discussed this. We've been talking with Tangle Swap, IOTA B, and Shimmer C. Um, Once it kind of became apparent that DeFi is going to be at least the initial focus on Shimmer, and probably pretty much the uh, biggest probability of success. And just to tie in, like, let's say Uniswap, it's funny how it's I used to think it was like ideology of decentralization, but in the a sense, it comes down to economics. Like, Uniswap says we have this huge following. If we come to your protocol, you're basically the price of your token is going to increase and your user base is going to increase. So you're going to go up in market cap. You're going to be able to compete. So then how much are you going to pay us? But at the same time, Uniswap wants to keep growing to maintain that kind of value. So if they see a protocol that has a huge following or a huge user base, they might say, you know what, you don't have to pay us. We just want to integrate with you guys. Now, Shimmer doesn't have that user base. So we got to get that user base so that we have some value so that we can reach out to these different, projects, and they say, wow, you guys have a really good user base. Gain that user base, you need TVL. Get TVL. One of the quickest things that people have found is, that's DeFi. So I've personally reached out to a lot of DeFi projects and been like, is there anything in which, one second, let me just check a quick message here. Okay. Oh, and then, and basically ask them, um, what can we do? Like maybe it's a DApp, maybe it's an application, maybe it's a supportive, there's certain aggregators that we don't have yet. There's certain um what do you call it? Kind of futures kind of integrations that we don't have yet. And basically each of those DeFi platforms, project owners have been saying it's just liquidity in the beginning. It's just liquidity. If the liquidity is there, then people will come because the prices aren't, I guess, as volatile. And then if the people come, all those other applications and stuff that are kind of add-ons, those projects will come because then the user base is there. So we put an RFP out to say, hey, we want to support the major DeFi platforms that have been working for the last 2 years, such as those three. We looked at how much funds we have. So we currently have, after the current approved payouts, we have about like 875,000. We essentially have approved payouts of, I think it's 340,000 now, that haven't been paid out, that we're still holding Shimmer. Again, this is all based on Shimmer price. So if the price goes up, then the 875,000 goes up, of course. So we don't have a huge amount. We have used just over, like, I think about 30% of the Shimmer supply, if we were to pay out all the outstanding payouts. But what we want to propose in the request for proposal is someone to say, hey, why don't you support liquidity that's going to help DeFi take off for Shimmer? Okay. So if they put a proposal in and they say, why don't you give, we could say, hey, we have 300,000 that we could supply for liquidity. That way we still have enough SMR to support grant funding. Again, this liquidity isn't like gone. Towards the last quarter, we could then pull this liquidity out and then support more grant funding. And to protect the treasury, we have discussed this in length with the committee of, okay, well, what pairs would we support? We would support USDT, IOTA if there is, and yeah, that's it actually, IOTA USDT. So I've also asked that to the DeFi projects. What pairs best support your guys' growth? And they've basically said USDT and IOTA pairs. Now, for us as a risk mitigation, it's always going to be difficult with the limited liquidity with Shimmer to liquidate to USDT. So if we have a pair, and let's say we have some impermanent loss, and we have more USDT holding after 3 months, even though the Shimmer price has gone up, it's almost a moot point because we need that USDT anyways. Sure, we could have had a little bit better price, but again, we're not trying to do this to earn yield. Like, oh, we want to earn 10%. It's not about that. It's simply about supporting DeFi takeoff by supporting those platforms, and get people in. And then if DeFi takes off, hopefully, fingers crossed, we then slowly, without affecting in a negative way, will probably pull that pooled assets out and then support that to grant funding. And we might get yield. We might get a little loss from impermanent loss. But either way, it's specifically just to help that. So we've talked about this probably the last 6 weeks. And
so the Treasury, am I getting this right? So the Treasury could assist these, these platforms in bootstrapping their initial liquidity.
Yep.
Yes, to cover transactions and stuff. But do you know if like Shimmer C, Tangle Swap, and IOTA B, if these projects they have enough like marketing power to even attract the user base in the beginning to have that kind of activity?
I mean, we haven't looked at that specifically. We do have an RFP for like a professional marketing, a request for proposal for a professional marketing campaign
to help these, not to help the treasury, but to help these projects.
To help the Shimmer ecosystem, whatever that may be,
Okay, I see. Right.
Yeah, and if they want to, if they think, hey, if the focus is DeFi, let's market DeFi on Shimmer, great. That's one thing that I think we think about, or I think about especially, is, man, marketing costs a lot of money if done professionally. But if we can help a project kick off, they then will go on to do marketing. So, now to your question of, does Shimmer C Tangle Swap, do they have enough budget or do they good enough in marketing? To be honest, I'm not experienced enough to know or not, or I haven't really talked about that with them. I do think the IF will support some marketing, but we do have that RFP out for professional marketing firms as well. But it's tough. Like, let's say we have 500,000 left. Like, I mean, do you think it would be good to spend $200,000 on a marketing campaign?
So yeah. So like, my question is how robust is their budgets? Like, do you know what I mean? Like, Shimmer C and Tangle Swap and IOTA B, have they raised enough funds to do a launch properly?
I mean, I haven't asked that question. I actually have a meeting with one of them soon, and I will propose that question. I think they've definitely done some campaigning, and I'm assuming they're in talks with IF and kind of coordinating that as well. I could be wrong, but
Yeah, I
what
think
do you think, Philo?
I mean, of course, that's like we can't talk. I mean, this is up on the projects to tell things like this. Um, Assuming they are have been clever over the last couple of months and nearly a year now. I'm sure most of them have some strategic partnerships and investors lined up that are making it possible for them to operate now, because I mean they are all in a waiting phase of waiting to get generate users, and with users generate some income over fees. But I think what for them definitely will be a super important thing is this having this liquidity, because for them the best marketing um, is of course an high API that they couldn't, and not just like a fake API that is just like based on 20K volume. If you have a proper liquidity and a proper volume on DEX, this is really something that attracts outside, or that can attract fresh capital from outside. And this is what all those protocols need. They need capital injections, not just from the Shimmer community, which is rather small, um, for this whole DeFi ecosystem of Shimmer to take off. We need to be able to get fresh capital from outside, and a really good way of doing this is um, being able to showcase stable pools with high liquidity and still high APR. And this is this usual thing. A new network will start. Um, there are actors outside in the crypto space and in the DeFi ecosystem. They of course wait for such new chains and ecosystems to launch, because in the first weeks and months you will have huge opportunities if you know what you're doing. Yeah, so you can really make a lot of money um, if you are experienced enough and you have enough capital at hand to really go into such opportunities, analyze the projects, and put a couple of big chunks of money into those things, because then you can really farm those liquidity rewards that will be quite high in the beginning. Um, and this can have this domino effect, yeah. So because they will come in, they will increase the liquidity, they will increase the volume. This will again attract more users because they see, oh yeah, it's really kind of seems to be a stabilized system with not super crazy price pumps, but a system where people can come in and can execute proper trading without the risk of blowing this whole market through the roof by putting a 50K order into it. And so this is how most DeFi ecosystems try to establish kind of a floor of activity and user base and liquidity. And yeah, having some solid foundational liquidity there, and if the treasury could supply some sort of liquidity in the beginning, that's a good and important point, because without this it's super hard to take off. And I think this is what they are all looking on. And then they can focus on really reaching out and market these things into
Yeah.
the Web3 space, which they have, of course, plans in the pockets to do that. Yeah, I mean, they're good connected right now. They have been reaching out over a long time and active in the space. And so kind of I think we have a quite good chance of getting into the right time and also the right position
Let
and in the right attention of others to get some fresh capital into the system.
we could also look at it like this. The IOTA Shimmer campaign, the IOTA sorry, the Shimmers what was it? The
Test and earn, learn and
the
earn,
the,
or
the Test
yeah,
to Earn Shimmer C campaign
yeah,
found this massive influx of users because there was like a pretty easy way to go and get some tokens, you know. And regardless of all the marketing that's ever been done, at the end of the day, I think crypto more than anything shows if there's a way to make money, someone will come and do it. So, and that's kind of what the DeFi project owners have said. Like, if the yield is there, then people will come. And then once people come, you get this snowball effect. And if that snowball effect takes off, then everything comes. The dApps come, investors come and then they start buying, doing deals with the DeFi protocols. The DeFi protocols want to make money, so that's what they want to. And then all of a sudden, if there's people using the DeFi protocol, they're getting their small percentage of yield, but on a large scale, they're making money. So now they have money to put towards marketing. So that's when I ask them, like, what do you guys need? Like, what's the most important thing? And they just say, it's just about yield. Like in the beginning, it's just about yield. The yield brings the people bring the funding and the investors. And then after that, it can become a full on, thing. But if that snowball effect doesn't take off, then it's just going to be a struggle. So we're just trying
Are
to.
a couple,
Mhm.
are a couple of these platforms, are they going to be orchestrating this with? Do you guys know if they're orchestrating some of this with EVM launch, or it's not really, aligned that way? They're not like it's not being set up that way.
I don't. Yeah, I don't.
Um, of course, we all have the same goals. Let's say it like this. Yeah. So of course, we will do everything possible to help that this whole thing gets a nice push on all levels. Um,
You guys know what I'm asking, right?
yeah.
I think though it's tough because it's like there's two things that could happen, right? Like massive marketing campaign when it just launches, which is exciting, but at the same time, what if a bug pops up? Then you
I, I
like take
No, no,
take the Shimmer campaign.
I'm not thinking like a massive marketing camp. I'm just thinking about what you guys are talking about because
Oh yeah, yeah,
that sounds really good. If
yeah.
people are setting this up, like doing this in the background,
I mean, we
because
we can't even we can't even provide the liquidity until EVM because we would have to use a multi-sig signature wallet, which can't come until EVM. So it would be nice that we provide this liquidity on day one, but we can't.
yeah. I
So
mean, they
if we
they day
if
one would anyway be uh, EVM is the precondition for everything, and
yeah
also on the first day of the EVM there will not be anything extremely it's not going to be like you switch on and then bang everything is going to bang. We also think that it will
I'm not,
you
I know, like not on the first day, but you know what I mean,
yeah, but
it,
you will have like an
like
on
1 month, 2 months.
yeah, you have like an on ramp
It would be
fast.
weird if EVM launched and there was no DeFi activity for
No,
like
there
a
will be
while until like
there
a
will be
project is ready.
Yeah, there will be projects will be ready, there will be pools, but although also these pools, they need time to build up and activity grows. But of course, in the first days, um, people will there will be some crazy stuff happening. Yeah, people will make, I don't know, they will make 10x in a day, and other people will lose everything in a couple of hours. This is this is going to happen because it's like very fluctuative in the beginning, especially if there's not super much activity and super much liquidity there. Um, so this is going to be like a ramp up phase, and I think the apps will also they will control their liquidity pools and their trading pairs. They will not open a DEX with 15 different trading pairs. No, they will start with one. Yeah, maybe really IOTA Shimmer or IOTA USDT or something like this, or Shimmer, blah, blah, blah. And if this pool is stable, they will open the next one and this will increase the usage. And so I think they all have looked into how it has been done in other protocols, what kind of are successful launch strategies for those pairs and for those platforms. So yeah, it's going to be a build-up phase over a couple of weeks, I think, until this thing is really running smooth and stable for everyone. But the first couple of weeks will be pretty interesting, and especially, like I said, uh, because if there is not huge liquidity already there, and you are someone with quite a nice bunch of capital at hand, and you come in, then of course you can have a big influence on the system, which will make it possible also to extract some proper profits, let's say it like this. And this is what those Ethereum whales are looking for. Yeah, they are looking for new chains, new ecosystems with proper tech and proper community where they can tap in, provide liquidity, farm some yields, farm some pools, and make a good buck. And they are important because they bring liquidity for others. They bring liquidity for all those small traders that come in and play around. Um, and of course, for their service of providing their capital and putting their capital at risk, they will, of course, also earn quite huge rewards. Yeah, and this is the play that they usually do. And they are, of course, mercenary because they usually move to the next big thing that is happening a couple of months later when the yields go down and the rewards, they will look out for the next big thing where they can jump on and do the same thing again. Yeah. But they are useful for the whole system in the end.
Yep.
Yeah. So we'll see. We'll see. We'll see.
Cool.
Yeah. JD, what are we? So I think we kind of would also need to set up a doc or something, or like an hackmd file, and start to add some of those lessons learned into a
Mhm.
draft version of like an updated draft version. Do you want to work on that, or you guys from the treasury maybe all together, or you want to send me over
No,
some stuff and I'll try to do it in between, or
no, I'll work on it. We went over the lessons learned already with the
yeah.
committee before presenting to the community. Wanted to make sure everyone's on board. Any other suggestions? But I'll uh, I'll put that together. I'll try to put that together this week and kind of do the comparison of the specification, kind of how you did it,
Mhm.
and yeah, then we can go from
That
there.
will be cool. Yeah, yeah, because then we potentially have both. I mean, for the framework thing, it's still kind of this. Um, Yeah, we know what we wanted to do, but not exactly, especially like the front end stuff. I have recently just looked again into Aragon. I mean, I'm sure you
Mhm.
remember from DAO Pioneers and things like this. They have made some big improvements, and also some bigger protocols have implemented their solution. I
Mhm.
still see it maybe not as bullet tested as the Open Zeppelin stuff, but they are
Mhm.
very, very deploy and user friendly what they're doing. So I'll try to investigate a little bit over the weekend. Um, More like, I mean, Lido, the biggest Ethereum staking, Lido DAO, the staking pool for Ethereum, which holds 35% of the whole Ethereum supply in their staking pool. They're managing their DAO using Aragon, which is a
Mhm.
huge. I mean, they have like I think they have like 35 billion of assets staked in Lido DAO, so it's kind of
Mhm.
crazy. But
Mhm.
seems like they trust this thing, so this is made me a little bit like, okay, cool.
Mhm.
But in the end, it doesn't. In the end, it doesn't matter. The system, the general system thing, is all the same. Yeah, governance contracts, front end, blah 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 blah. Um, and I don't think we are really looking into doing something different. The Open Zeppelin stuff is kind of we're checking this already, and all looks fine. But yeah, EVM launch needs to happen first because before this gets really concrete.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I even thought about like, so we archive projects and, maybe once a quarter or once every 6 months, we take some of the archive projects and somehow put it up in like Tally and let the community
Yeah,
choose one or something.
yeah,
I don't know, something to integrate in that EVM voting. Like we could, take funds from the Treasury Committee funds, send it to a smart contract address, and then say, hey, here's 10 archive proposals. Why
Yeah.
doesn't the community vote which one should get funded? So,
Yeah.
I think
Cool, like a
given
little,
that,
like a raffle or
yeah,
something like this. Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, exactly. And then that would also bring some community engagement. So I think that would be good.
That would be cool. That's a nice idea, actually. Yeah. Alrighty, we can
Cool.
work on that for the next weeks. Maybe until then, it was nice having the two of you here. Good to have you overclocked, hear you, and get your questions as always. But yeah, let's talk again next week. Yeah, and if anything comes
Cool.
around,
Did you just drop out?
Oh, I dropped out.
Bali internet. Yeah, man. Thanks for coming. You always have some awesome questions and create some.
Hey, are you guys there?
So we've been getting kind of
Yeah,
boring over here.
it's some, I don't know. You have been dropping out, or JD have been dropping out.
Yeah, I
Confusing.
just I dropped out, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was fun catching up with you guys.
Yeah, cool.
Yeah. It's good hanging.
Alrighty, let's do it again next week. Thanks everyone, and have a nice evening, morning, or wherever you are. Bye bye.
Bye bye.
Bye.